So last Tuesday, I believe it was. Actually, you know what? It was Monday. I had a 1P-LSD trip, and it's been a while since I've tried 1P-LSD. I had it before, probably around a year or two ago. These were micro pellets, so they were 150 micrograms. And funny enough, it was actually a lot more intense of an experience than it was last time. But I don't really think that has anything to do with potency. I think it just has to do with me being in a different spot mentally and experiencing a lot more intense effects than I used to for whatever reason. I still can't really figure out why that's happening, but it's just something that I have to deal with now. I have to be very careful with my psychedelic explorations. I didn't even bother trying to smoke DMT on the trip just because I didn't want to overwhelm myself. Usually, whenever I would do LSD or 1P-LSD, I would always try to smoke DMT around the peak or maybe afterwards. It would get kind of tribal and scary usually when I do that, but I liked it back then. But now I'm a lot more hesitant to try that. If I'm gonna do DMT, I'm probably just gonna mix it, or I'm probably just gonna do it on its own instead of trying to be a hero. But this experience was really intense. Visually, it wasn't as crazy as my last 4-ACO DMT trip, and realistically, it's not likely that it would, just because LSD typically, at least in the doses that I take, don't tend to be as visual as 4-ACO DMT. Originally, I was trying to take it so that I can analyze hallucinatory form constants, which are, as you guys know, the patterning that makes up the psychedelic trip. It could be like swirls or checkers or honeycomb stuff. Those are just some examples. There's probably a lot more that aren't really documented. I think the area of study is still a bit premature. So that was my original intent of trying to going into the experience, was trying to analyze those so that I can make some more artwork based on it. But unfortunately, the actual hallucinatory form constants weren't as strong. They weren't the typical sort of tribal rainbow colored and very complex patterning and just kind of like a Matrix-esque patterning. It's very hard to explain. I tried to draw it, but I didn't really get too much. Well, I kind of did, but it was not as strong. There seems to be a slightly different flavor when you try basic tryptamines. They're a lot better for trying to analyze these specific patternings, but there was instances of pareidolia, which is seeing faces in the patterning and the closed-eyed visuals and stuff like that. So it wasn't completely just not interesting or anything like that. It was still, nice to watch, but it just wasn't what I was hoping that I would experience. In terms of the mental state, it actually, I think that's where the majority of the intensity was, and it actually was giving me a bit of fear. Not so much fear, but just a bit of an uneasy feeling, or a bit of a little bit of a worry that it's going to get too intense, and then I'm going to lose control of my thoughts, and because usually I'm always worried that I'm going to lose control, and then I'm going to rationalize ideas that I might hurt myself or something for whatever reason. But all the time, those are just weird sort of OCD type thoughts that aren't really based in reality. And once the trip is over, those are completely out the window, and I don't really worry about that stuff. I don't know why it happens. It's just it's a weird side effect, and that's pretty much the main issue that I've been having with my psychedelic trips now is just self-preservation, and I think I'm kind of psyching myself out every time I go into it. I'm expecting to have those kinds of thoughts, and then I end up manifesting them. So what I try to do is I try to just distract myself from that as much as I can, and I have specific techniques that I'm able to implement to be able to do that. So it's not a complete you know, a mind bender or anything like that. It's definitely something I can handle. But I wasn't expecting it to be as mentally as I guess challenging as it was, because usually I'm able to handle LSD very easily, but this time it was probably one of the hardest LSD trips that I've had, actually, to be honest. And it might be just because the micro pellets are really powerful, but you know, I can't really say for certain or not. This is just a one-off experience. I have 9 more, so I can definitely keep trying to see where it goes. But I don't know if I'd want to have another trip with that just anytime soon. Well, I mean, I would want to have maybe a DMT trip next instead of that, and maybe kind of put it off for a bit, because I haven't stepped into the DMT realm for quite some time. So I think the time is coming up for me soon. So that's probably going to be the next one that I'm going to make a trip report about once I can sort of build up the courage to go through with it. But all in all, this was a pretty beneficial experience. I had a lot of revelations in certain philosophy concepts that I've been kind of rattling around in my brain. I actually looked up on Psychology Today on the different personality types that take different drugs, and then it explained that people that take psychedelics tend to be fixated on a specific concept or topic and think very deeply into something, as well as them being very high in openness. So I thought it was very funny that it explained that people that take psychedelics tend to get very fixated on specific topics that are sort of rattling around in their brain. And it makes sense when you see all the people that attribute LSD and other psychedelics to their discoveries and you know, breakthroughs. One person, for instance, Kerry Mullis, who developed PCR, and he said he gave credit to LSD for helping him discover that. And he said that he wouldn't have discovered PCR if it hadn't been for his psychedelic trips. So I think that's really a really cool thing. That's part of the reason why I utilize psychedelics, and for the art reasons and other perceptual psychology aspects of it as well, like the, as I mentioned, hallucinatory form constants, and trying to study those. So yeah, when I have my next trip, I will definitely let you guys know what happens. It's definitely going to be a DMT trip. I don't know how far of a breakthrough it's going to be, but it's probably going to be something that is, you know, somewhat challenging, and something that I can actually try to make some decent art from. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next. So peace out.